If zombies ruled the world today, would you know which island to choose to survive? As cities collapse, streets become war zones, and panic consumes humanity, there are islands where the apocalypse simply could not reach. Islands so remote, so isolated, that they seem to have been created for exactly that, to protect the few who manage to reach them. In a world overrun by infected people, planes crashing, borders closed, and crowds fighting for shelter, the sea may be your best defense. But it's not enough to choose any island. Some hide secrets, others are true camouflaged paradises, and today you will discover 10 safe islands to survive a zombie apocalypse. Places with difficult access, hostile nature to those infected, and real chances of staying alive while the rest of the world collapses. And make no mistake, some of these islands exist, they are inhabited, and you may have never heard of them. But first, take advantage and subscribe to the channel, because here you will find the most strategic, detailed and revealing content about survival in a zombie apocalypse. If you enjoy this type of topic, worry about the what if, or simply want to be one step ahead when the world starts to fall apart, then this channel is your digital refuge. And of course, if the video has captured your attention this far, leave a like. This helps spread this information to more people who, like you, want to know where they would really be safe. Now, respond in the comments. If you had to flee now without looking back, which island would you choose to isolate yourself and survive? Or better yet, write it down. My hiding place would be an island if you like this style of survival. I will read everything and answer the best ones. Because now, let's get to the list. And what comes next could completely change the way you see the world map. Tristan da Cunha Island, South Atlantic. Imagine a place you can only reach by boat after a journey of almost a week in the middle of the South Atlantic. A piece of land surrounded by a raging ocean, so isolated that not even civilian satellites capture frequent images. This is Tristan da Cunha, one of the most remote inhabited islands on the planet, located between Africa and South America. If there is a place in the world where a zombie apocalypse simply wouldn't reach, it's here. With a population of just over 250 inhabitants, this island lives at its own pace, completely disconnected from the commercial, tourist or military routes of the rest of the planet. There are no airports, large ports or frequent ship transit. To give you an idea, the most common transport is done by occasional vessels arriving from South Africa, and even these trips only happen a few times a year. Now think, in a scenario of global collapse where borders close and trade routes disappear, places like this become practically invisible to the chaos. Tristan da Cunha has a geography that helps a lot. Surrounded by cliffs and with a cold and humid oceanic climate, the place is hostile enough to scare away the curious but kind to those who know how to live off the land. Local agriculture, abundant fishing, and a strong community culture make this island ideal for long-term weather. Furthermore, its population lives in partial self-sufficiency, which means that many residents already know how to cultivate, preserve food, and use natural resources without depending on large systems. While coastal cities like Rio de Janeiro would be engulfed by panic, looting and mass infections in the first days of the apocalypse, Tristan da Cunha would remain silent, with the sound of the waves as the only warning. There's no way to get there on impulse. There is no way to invade en masse. And most importantly, there is no reason for a zombie to even try to cross an icy ocean, without stimulation, without food, and without knowing where it will end up. If you're looking for a hideaway that combines total isolation, close-knit community, and zero exposure, Tristan da Cunha should be at the top of your hideaway list. Bouvet Island, territory of Norway, South Atlantic. If you think Tristan da Cunha is remote, it's because you haven't heard of Bouvet Island. This is officially the most isolated point of land on the planet. Bouvet is in the middle of the South Atlantic, practically in the direction of Antarctica, and belongs to Norway. There is no permanent population, there is no tourist infrastructure. What exists there is a vast expanse of ice, volcanic rock and silence, and this is precisely what makes Bouvet Island one of the safest places in the world to survive a zombie apocalypse. Bouvet is a territory difficult to access, even for scientific expeditions. The rough seas around the island prevent any direct approach for weeks on end. Its climate is freezing, which in itself would be an insurmountable obstacle for any decomposing creature. And as the island is uninhabited, there are no hosts, there is no crowding, there are no vectors of contamination. In other words, to zombies, Bouvet is sterile. The territory has already served as a base for some meteorological and oceanographic monitoring expeditions, and there is even a small automated station maintained by Norway. This means there is equipment there that can be reused in an emergency situation. Generators, antennas, data collection systems, all of this can be adapted to create a survival post of the highest technological level without the need for contact with the outside world. While tropical metropolises like Manila or Lagos would be burning in flames and internal conflicts, Bouvet would remain ice-cold, hidden and immune to the chaos. Of course, it's not an easy place. You need to know how to manage in the cold, understand shelter, thermal insulation, and alternative food sources. But in a scenario where the enemy moves by scent and noise, Bouvet's icy silence may be the last barrier between you and the end. Pitken Island, Pacific Ocean. Pitken Island is a lost jewel in the middle of the Pacific. With a population of less than 50 inhabitants, this little paradise is literally in the middle of nowhere, between New Zealand and Chile, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest civilization. Forget planes, forget hotels, forget social media. Here, survival is achieved through direct contact with nature, and that is precisely what makes it perfect for escaping the zombie apocalypse. Pitken has a mountainous topography, with elevated areas that offer privileged visibility over the entire length of the island. This means that any approach, whether by boat or by some unfortunate wandering infected person, would be noticed in advance. The vegetation is dense, marine fauna is abundant, and local agriculture guarantees basic supplies. In other words, you don't need to leave the island. Everything you need to live is there. The most curious thing is that the island has had a history of isolation since the beginning. It was settled by mutineers from the HMS Bounty in the 18th century who fled the British Navy and chose this remote spot to hide out forever. The community's mentality to this day is one of protection, tradition, and survival. Now imagine the following scenario. While the whole world is running desperately for supplies, trying to escape the chaos in the big capitals, you are in Pitken, hearing only the sound of the waves and trees, with time and tranquility to plan. No zombies, no humans, no threats, just nature and you. And for those who wonder if it's really worth investing in such a distant refuge, think like this. If in 200 years almost no one got there, why would an apocalypse do it? Satra Island, Yemen, Indian Ocean. Socotra is the kind of place that feels like it came from another planet. Located in the Indian Ocean, around 350 kilometers off the coast of Yemen, this island is known as the most alien place on Earth because of its unique biodiversity, with more than a third of its plants found nowhere else in the world. But besides being beautiful and bizarre, Socotra is also a natural fortress against the zombie apocalypse. With a rugged geography, towering cliffs, internal deserts, and surreal forests like dragon trees, Socotra is a logistical challenge even in times of peace. Access to the island is extremely limited, with sporadic flights and transport connecting to the mainland only when there is political stability in the region. In other words, in a scenario of global collapse, Socotra would simply disconnect from the world, and that is excellent. The local population is small, with just over 40,000 people living in villages spread across the island. The lifestyle is simple, based on agriculture, fishing, and artisanal trade. There are no large urban centers, which drastically reduces the chance of large-scale outbreaks. Furthermore, the population has a strong connection with the land, mastering survival techniques and the use of natural resources that would be essential in a new era. Imagine the contrast. While cities like London, New York, or São Paulo plunge into panic, with streets taken over by infected people and looting on every corner, you are in Socotra, listening to the wind through the crooked trees, tending your small vegetable garden and watching the sea. A zombie wouldn't cross the Indian Ocean, and even if he tried, he wouldn't arrive alive. The island itself seems made to keep the world away, and perhaps, for that very reason, it is the ideal place to start over when everything is over. Pharaoh Islands, North Atlantic between Iceland and Norway. If you're looking for a getaway that combines modern infrastructure with geographic isolation, the Faroe Islands are a simply brilliant option. Located between Iceland and Norway, these 18 islands of volcanic origin belong to the Kingdom of Denmark, but have their own governance and culture. And in a zombie apocalypse, they function like a Nordic fortress, cold, safe and functional. With just over 50,000 inhabitants, the Faroe Islands already live in relative isolation even today. Communication between the islands is via underground tunnels, ferries, and a highly organized network of internal transport. This means that in the event of an invasion or threat, it is possible to control access, isolate areas, and maintain safe escape routes without depending on the continent. The climate here is one of your greatest allies. Cold, humid, and often covered in fog, the archipelago is naturally hostile to any form of contamination by biological agents. The undergrowth, deep fjords, and steep hills make mobility difficult for any creature that relies on sight, sound, or speed. And let's face it, zombies don't know how to deal with ice, mud, or piercing wind. Furthermore, the Faroe Islands have a first-world infrastructure: internet, hospitals, schools, and an expanding food self-sufficiency system. Fishing, in fact, is the basis of the local economy. And if there's one thing you'll need when the world stops, it's fish. Kirgalan Island, French territory in the southern Indian Ocean. Known as the Island of Desolation, Kirgalan is so isolated that many people are not even aware of its existence. Located south of the Indian Ocean, it belongs to France and is thousands of kilometers from any continent. There are no commercial flights. The only access is by ships that take weeks to arrive and only dock a few times a year. This already says a lot about your safety in a zombie apocalypse. With a sub-Antarctic climate, constant winds, and a relief dominated by rocky mountains and inhospitable plains, the island offers an environment naturally protected against any biological threat. Decaying zombies wouldn't last long here. The humidity, cold, and lack of human prey would make the place lethal for any type of infected person. The island is home to a French scientific base and has some logistical facilities, such as antennas, laboratories, and shelters, all designed to withstand extreme weather. These spaces could easily be converted into self-sufficient survival centers. There are also populations of birds, fish, and native vegetation that allow, with planning, to maintain a basic diet without contact with the outside world. In a zombie apocalypse, while the south of Brazil, Buenos Aires, or Cape Town would become war zones, Kirgalan would remain untouched, cold, and lethal to anyone who dared to approach. Here, the biggest enemy isn't the zombie. It's time, the cold, and loneliness. But if you're prepared, those same enemies become your greatest allies. Heard Island, Australian territory close to Antarctica. Heard Island is the kind of getaway no one considers until the world starts to end. Located in the middle of the Southern Ocean between South Africa and Australia, Heard is an extremely remote, uninhabited, and brutally cold territory. But this brutality is his greatest protection. After all, in a zombie apocalypse, the last place a horde of infected people would be able to reach, or even survive, would be here. Covered by glaciers, dominated by the active volcano Big Ben, and surrounded by violent seas, Heard is inaccessible for much of the year. Access is only possible by authorized scientific expeditions, which face weeks of navigation under the constant risk of storms and icebergs. In other words, there is no surprise invasion on this island. If someone, or something, wants to get here, they will need to overcome nature itself first. Despite being inhospitable, the island has support structures for research, such as emergency shelters, monitoring equipment, and technical stocks. This can be reused by prepared survivors. Furthermore, the environment is rich in marine fauna and birds. With the right tools, you can fish, purify snow water, and shelter safely indefinitely. Now think, while entire cities collapse in less than 48 hours, with supermarkets looted, hospitals unusable, and roads blocked, Heard remains the same: cold, silent, unreachable. It was not made for tourism, it was made for resistance. And if you're willing to brave extreme weather, this island could be the perfect hideout where no zombie, no matter how hungry, could find you. Rapa Island, French Polynesia. If the zombie apocalypse had a soundtrack, Rapa would be the dramatic pause between the screams. Located in the most remote part of French Polynesia, Rapa is a volcanic island with just over 500 inhabitants, completely isolated from traditional tourism. Surrounded by mountains and a deep sea, it lives at a pace that seems to ignore the rest of the planet. And precisely for this reason, it is a rare gem in times of global collapse. The island only receives occasional vessels coming from Tahiti, a journey that can take up to 2 days of sailing. There are no airports or hotels. Communications are limited. The lifestyle is simple, focused on fishing, agriculture and local production. But it is this simplicity that represents security when the world falls apart. In Rapa Island, self-sufficiency is not a fad, it is culture. In addition to the strategic location, the rugged geography offers natural protection against invasions. Steep slopes, hidden bays and trails that only locals know make any type of enemy advance extremely difficult. And when we talk about zombies, who act on instinct, sound and limited vision, each natural obstacle is an added advantage for those who are prepared, while places like Bali, Hawaii, or even the Caribbean islands would be devastated by the rapid arrival of infected tourists and the collapse of the urban structure. Rapa Island would remain strong, distant, forgotten, perfect. And whoever knows how to get there will have found more than one island, will have found a future. Floriana Island, Galapagos, Ecuador. The Galapagos Islands are famous for their biodiversity and history with Charles Darwin, but few people know the true power of a place like Floriana in an apocalyptic setting. Located in the Ecuadorian archipelago, this island is home to less than 200 people, lives in harmony with nature, and has an almost completely decentralized system of life. Floriana has controlled access both by sea and air, with strict environmental limitations. This means that even in normal times, foot traffic is restricted. Now, imagine a world collapsing. Environmental rules become real barriers, and that's all you want when you need to hide from a zombie pandemic. The island is mountainous, has natural water sources, fertile soil and a stable climate. The population already practices subsistence agriculture and lives from artisanal fishing. In addition, there are elevated areas that allow a broad view of the entire coast, functioning as observation points and natural defense. The inhabitants themselves are resilient, adapted to isolation, and aware of the need to maintain balance with available resources. While Guayaquil, Quito, or other Latin American capitals would become epicenters of despair, Floriana would remain calm, almost untouchable, and the distance from trade routes ensures that even if zombies infected all of mainland Ecuador, the island would only know about it by radio and would still have time to close down completely. In an apocalypse, the secret is this: predict and protect before it arrives. And Floriana already lives at this pace. Yakushima Island, Japan, ending. Our list with a flourish is Yakushima, an island located south of Japan, covered by a forest so dense that it seems like something out of a fantasy tale. Declared a natural heritage site by UNESCO, Yakushima combines natural isolation, controlled access and self-sufficiency with an ecological wealth that can sustain its residents for generations. Despite being part of Japanese territory, Yakushima has its own lifestyle. Few inhabitants, many preserved areas, and a strong culture of connection with nature make this island ideal for a survival scenario. The ancient cedar forest, known as Yakusugi, is not just beautiful. It is a natural labyrinth for anyone who doesn't know it, and that includes zombies. The island has springs, clean rivers, a basic solar energy network and access to the sea for fishing. Furthermore, its strategic location south of the main Japanese island offers a safe distance from major urban centers such as Tokyo and Osaka, which would quickly collapse from viral spread. Yakushima is far enough away to escape the chaos, but close enough to be accessible, as long as you get there before catastrophe. While mainland Japan would sink into panic and disorder, Yakushima would have the chance to survive in isolation, protected by mountains, forests, and a people who already live in balance with the essentials. And if you stop to think, perhaps there is no better place to rebuild humanity than on an island where nature still dictates the rules. Now that you know the 10 safest islands to survive a zombie apocalypse, I want to know, which one would be your hiding place? Comment below using the phrase, "My refuge would be," and complete with your favorite island. I want to see who would choose the coldest ones, who would go to the middle of the Pacific, and who would bet on the forests of Japan. And if you know of an island that should be on this list, comment too. I read everything and may include it in the next video. While the world runs for weapons, the true survivors are looking to the sea, because in a scenario where the zombie apocalypse becomes real, it's not brute force that guarantees survival. It's strategy. And few places are as strategic as remote, isolated islands, almost invisible to the rest of humanity. As the cities sink into chaos, turmoil, and infection, these islands stand firm, silent, as if waiting for those who know where to look. Places where time slows down, where every resource is valuable, and where survival does not depend on fighting, but on intelligent choices. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You're already a few steps ahead of those who will be caught off guard when the apocalypse begins. Now, do the following. Subscribe to the channel, because every week I bring exclusive, strategic, and realistic content about survival, safe locations, and everything you need to know to avoid becoming another one in the midst of chaos. If this video gave you any new ideas, if it made you think differently, leave a like. This helps this content reach more people who, like you, want to prepare before it's too late. Now don't stop here. Click on the next video that appears on the screen. See you there.